Allahu, 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 Allahu.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin Khatamin Nabiyyin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een wa ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Fasalli li rabbika wanhar. Sadaqallahu mawlana al-azim. Inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala al-nabi. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala ali Sayyidina wa mawlana Muhammadin wa ashabi Sayyidina wa mawlana Muhammadin wa barik wa sallim wa salli alayhi. Brothers and sisters, formally I say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh to all of you. So today our subject is the fiqh of Qurbani and Eid. So first, inshallah, there's two elements to today's session. The first element is Qurbani, and the second element is the prayer of Eid itself. Inshallah, first I will talk about Qurbani, and then I will speak about the prayer of Eid itself. So the first thing is the meaning of Qurbani. What does Qurbani mean? And what is the ruling of Qurbani? Who has to offer Qurbani? Is it sunnat? Is it wajib? Is it fard? What is the legal ruling, the shari hukum of Qurbani? So first of all, the meaning of Qurbani in Arabic, Qurbani in Arabic, the word for it is udhiyah. It is udhiyah. Now that is probably quite familiar when we say Eidul Adha. Eidul Adha. We call it Eid al-Adha because it is the Eid of Udhiyah, the Eid of Qurbani. In Arabic, the word for Qurbani is Udhiyah. The definition of Qurbani, and I've highlighted or underlined some of the key points. And if you leave your emails, inshallah, if you leave your emails at the end of the session on a piece of paper with the brothers, I can send you the power presentation as well. Okay? So the definition of Udhiyah of Qurbani is slaughtering a specific animal, slaughtering a specific kind of animal during a specific number of days. So it can't be done all through the year. And it can't be any animal. There's conditions. Slaughtering a specific animal during specific days by a specific person. There are certain conditions, there is a standard, there is a criterion that you have to reach, okay, as a person. With a specific intention. 4 things. Slaughtering of a specific animal during a specific number of days by a specific person with a specific intention, and those are the 4 things that I'm going to talk about today. Okay? What is that specific animal? What are those specific days? Who is that specific person that needs to do the Qurbani? And what is that specific intention? Okay? So that is the purpose of today. The legal ruling is, it is wajib. Qurbani is wajib. That means that if you leave it deliberately, then you are sinful. You are sinful. You have committed a makruh tahrimi. You have committed a prohibitively disliked act. Any wajib tahrimi, if you leave a wajib tahrimi, you've committed a makruh tahrimi. If you leave a wajib, you commit a makruh tahrimi. Okay? So you would have a sin on your part for leaving Qurbani. And it is wajib not only upon just the father of the house, as this may be a misconception, it is wajib upon the husband and the wife and the children is probably not the right word here. What I mean by children here is the adults and the children. Okay? We're going to look at the conditions. So if a man thought that, if I gave Qurbani on behalf of all my family and I gave 1 goat, then the Qurbani has been offered. That's not right. Okay? The woman might have to do a separate Qurbani if she meets that criteria. And the husband may have to do it, and even his children in the family, the children are their children. Okay? So these are people who are adults. We're going to look at all those conditions. So 1 Qurbani on behalf of everybody in the family, that's not right. Okay? And I'm going to look at the particular things, inshallah. What are the basic conditions? So explaining some of the parts of the definition, first thing I said is slaughtering an animal. Slaughtering an animal. So slaughtering could either be that you do it yourself. Slaughtering could either be that you slaughter yourself, or you appoint somebody else to do it. Like people pay charities now to do it. So the charity is your agent, a proxy. What you call a proxy or an agent, okay? In Arabic we call them wakil shar'i, al-wakil shar'i, okay? It's an agent that you appoint, you say, do my qurbani for me. So slaughtering could be either you do it yourself or you do it through an appointed person. It could be a charity, it could be an individual, it could be your friend, your cousin in Pakistan or in wherever you live, Bangladesh or whichever part of the world you live. Okay? And then we said it has to be a specific animal, right? Now there are three kinds of animals. Animals in terms of qurbani are divided into three types. You have the camel, you have the cow, and then you have the sheep. And in the camel you've got both the male and the female, the she camel, and in the cow you've got the buffalo as well, and in the sheep you've got the goat as well. Okay, so the goat and the sheep, or the cow and the buffalo, or a camel, male camel or a she camel. There's conditions though. If you're going to do a qurbani of a camel, it must be at least 5 years old. If the camel is 4 years old, your qurbani is not valid. The buffalo and the cow, the condition for a buffalo and a cow is that it must be at least 2 years old. If the buffalo is 1.5 years old, the qurbani is not valid. And the condition for a sheep and a goat is that it must be at least 2 years old. If it is 1 year old, then the qurbani will not be, it will not be valid. Okay? Unless it's a ram that is, if it's a ram and it looks, it's 1 year old, but it's, because it's big, it's eaten a lot, it looks big, it looks like a 2-year-old one, then you're allowed to give qurbani of a ram. Okay? But with the other animals, it's fixed. Okay? It has to be that. Now, these are the only types of animals. If somebody gave a chicken, I've spoken about the chicken. If somebody gave a chicken as qurbani, it's not valid. Okay? Hen or a chicken, okay? Same thing. And then the same category. And if somebody gave money instead, if somebody just gave money to the poor, for example, and said, this is my qurbani, is that valid? No. It has to be an animal. Okay? Qurbani is an animal. So the money is not sufficient. I've written that. Money is, the third line down, I said, or money, not sufficient. Money is not sufficient. Now, there's conditions in the animals as well. I'm not going to go into that, but it's amazing when you go to the animal market. I've experienced that in the Arab world, in Damascus, for example. We bought our sheep in 2001 when we done our qurbani there. In 2001, we actually, all we had was we had our animals slaughtered by the butcher, but we then ourselves prepared our own meat. And it took us about 8-9 hours in the back garden that we were living in to prepare. We cut down the animal ourselves. We made, mashallah, we had a beautiful barbecue in the evening with all of our students of knowledge that came as well. And we gave food and chicken, not chicken, sorry, it was meat. So there you go. Chicken is not allowed in qurbani. So we gave meat to our neighbors and our friends. We're going to talk about distribution as well. But when you go into the markets, you will realize that these people who are selling animals are experts. Looking at an animal is a science in itself. Now, you know this because when you do the fiqh of qurbani, you realize there's conditions that the animal has to meet for it to be a valid animal. Again, I'm just going to mention some of them here. I've mentioned here that there shouldn't be a major deficiency in the animal. If there's a major deficiency, like if for example, the ear of an animal is cut off, okay? If the ear is not a valid animal for qurbani. If somebody gave that as a qurbani, qurbani is not valid. Okay? Likewise, if the animal can't stand up and can't walk, okay, you can't give that as a qurbani. If somebody did, it's not a valid qurbani at all. Likewise, if the teeth of a sheep are missing, for example, and it can't chew on grass, it can't eat its food, then you can't give qurbani. But if the teeth are missing but it can eat, okay, then you can give qurbani. Likewise, if there's a deficiency with the tongue. So this is why the people who buy the qurbani animal investigate. They check the teeth, they check the mouth, they check the hooves, they check the eyes. If the animal is blind, it's not a valid animal. If the animal is deaf, not a valid animal. So there's conditions within the animal as well. And then we said, moving on to the next point, we said in the definition, a specific animal, we've looked at a specific animal, slaughtering a specific animal, in a specific number of days. Now, if it's within those days, it's a qurbani. And if it's outside those days, before those dates, or after those dates, it's not a qurbani. And there are 3 days and 2 nights. How many? 3 days and 2 nights. The days of qurbani, 10th of Dhul Hijjah. 10th of Dhul Hijjah is the day of Eid. Okay? From the Fajr of Eid morning, so your qurbani from the Fajr of Eid morning till the Maghrib of the 12th of Dhul Hijjah. From the 10th to the 12th. 10th, 11th, 12th of Dhul Hijjah. Till the time of Maghrib. This is the time of qurbani. If somebody offered his qurbani the night before Eid, before Fajr, qurbani is not valid. If somebody offered his qurbani on the Isha of the 12th of Dhul Hijjah, or on the 13th of Dhul Hijjah, it's not valid. These days, the 10th, 11th, 12th are known as Ayyamun Nahr. Ayyamun, the days of Nahr. Nahr is qurbani. Okay, the days of slaughter. If it's a city, and most of us people live in cities, urban areas, but if it is a city, then the condition is that the qurbani cannot be done straight after Fajr. The qurbani has to be done after Eid prayer. Okay, if you live in a town, in a city, then the qurbani must be done after Eid prayer. If somebody was living in an urban city area and they done their qurbani before Eid, like in Pakistan particularly, I've seen that people are waiting to do their qurbani. They're waiting for that Eid namaz to finish and then go into the towns. And I was in Karachi last year and I saw, mashallah, a beautiful scene of qurbani. You feel qurbani in the Muslim world. We're quite deprived of it here. And I hope, inshallah, one day we will revive that sunnah here as well, inshallah. To do congregational qurbanis. But I saw it in Pakistan, I saw it in Damascus as well, whilst I was there. You see it on Hajj, but in Hajj it happens in the slaughterhouses in Mina. But alhamdulillah, I even went into the slaughterhouses, and we even done our qurbani in Hajj as well. We done our own qurbani in Hajj, in the slaughterhouses. We had people who could do it, mashallah. And, life is all experience. But you see, the people are waiting for the Eid to finish and go and do the qurbani. Because in city areas, you cannot do your qurbani before Eid prayer. Your qurbani will not be valid. In village areas, you can give qurbani before Eid Jama'ah. In village areas, you can give qurbani before Jama'ah. Likewise, we have cousins, families, or charities we give money and they do qurbani in another country. Now their Eid there may be on a different day. Like Eid, inshallah, this year will be in the UK, will be on Sunday, inshallah. And then in Pakistan, for example, it's going to be Monday. Right? So let's say you've sent your qurbani animal over into another country. What's the condition there of the time? I mean, it's your qurbani happening in a different country. Is there a condition there with time? Yes, it has to happen within the days of Eid. But what we look at there is the time of the person who's going to do the qurbani, not your time. Okay? So if he's done qurbani within the days of Eid, your qurbani is offered. Okay? So you consider his time, not your own time. So you may not have prayed your Eid yet, for example. And you've sent your money, you may not have prayed your Eid yet, and you've sent your money to a country where your qurbani has been offered. Before you've prayed your Eid, is your qurbani valid? Yes, it is. The qurbani is valid, because in a qurbani you look at the time of the agent, the time of the proxy, the person who's doing the qurbani on behalf of you. Okay, that's what you take into consideration. Making up a missed qurbani. So you've missed the days now. Let's say you've missed the days of qurbani. You have to give a qurbani. What is the ruling? Can you do a qurbani now? You've got last year's qurbani to do. Can you do it in the next coming 3 days? So the answer is no. If you have a qada of qurbani, if you have a missed qurbani that you were supposed to do and you didn't offer that qurbani, then the ruling is that you must give an animal of qurbani as sadaqah. How do you make up a missed qurbani? By giving an animal of qurbani as charity to the poor. And your qada has been made up. You don't slaughter the animal as qada. Does that make sense? Also, you can give money, the monetary value of that animal. So if the sheep is costing, let's say, £100, for example, then you give £100 to make up your missed Qurbani. So the qada of Qurbani is not by slaughtering an animal. The qada of Qurbani is not by slaughtering an animal. It's by giving a similar animal a sadaqah or by giving money a sadaqah. Moving on, we said in the definition of Qurbani is slaughtering a specific animal within a specific number of days by a specific person with a specific intention. What is that specific intention? And the specific intention is that you are doing Qurbani for the purpose of Qurbani. What's the purpose of Qurbani? For the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there needs to be sincerity. If somebody is doing Qurbani because he just wants to obtain meat, because he wants to make kebabs on it, and he's joined in a Qurbani, his Qurbani is not valid. Because Qurbani is ibadah. Qurbani is? And to eat food is adah. Eating food is adat. And doing Qurbani is ibadat. And the thing that distinguishes between ibadat and adat is niyyat. Your intention differentiates between, look, you walk into the masjid with your right foot, but you've just got a habit of doing that. There's no thawab. Even if you walked in with your right foot, no thawab. Because adat, you walk in with your right foot. But you walk into the masjid with your right foot with the intention that it's the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Now that right foot, walking into the masjid with the right foot is ibadat. Your niyyat, your niyyah, your intention, it distinguishes between ada and ibadah. So we slaughter an animal to eat. That's ada. But you slaughter an animal for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's ibadah. So your intention mustn't be that you want to obtain meat. And we're going to talk about that later as well. How the intention can change the Qurbani. Especially if you're sharing a cow and one of them is not doing it with the intention of Qurbani, what happens? We're going to look at that inshallah. Quran and Hadith speak about Qurbani extensively. It is a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. He offered Qurbani during his life. The verse I've written is a very popular verse that I recited in the beginning. فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ إِنَّا أَعْطَيْنَاكَ الْكَوْثَرَ فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ. So turn in prayer towards your Lord. فَصَلِّ. Turn in prayer. Pray salah. لِرَبِّكَ, towards your Lord. وَانْحَرْ. And sacrifice animals. Nahr. Nahr is sacrifice. Okay? Sacrifice animals. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered us to sacrifice animals. This is where the Qurbani is mentioned in the Quran. Wanhar. Okay? In the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, a number of hadiths, traditions from the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ is recorded to have said in Sunan al-Tirmidhi and Ibn Majah, there is nothing dearer and more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during the days of udhiyah. And what are the days of udhiyah? During the days of udhiyah. What are the days of udhiyah? 10th, 11th and 12th. There is nothing more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during the days of Qurbani than sacrificing animals. The best act during these days is to sacrifice animals. The sacrificed animal on the day of judgment shall come with its horns. The animal will rise with its hooves. And all of those things will be weighed in your scale. The sacrifice is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before the blood reaches the ground. Therefore, sacrifice with an open and happy heart. Don't say, oh yeah, this is a responsibility, I'm just trying to absolve myself of the responsibility. I just want to offer Qurbani for the sake of it. No. The Prophet ﷺ said, if you're going to give Qurbani, do it with an open heart. Do it with a happy heart. Because before the blood spills onto the ground, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts it. Another hadith on the Qurbani, the Prophet ﷺ said, he who had the ability to offer Qurbani, the person who should have done his Qurbani, if he didn't, and he avoided it, he should not attend our place of prayer. He should not come for Eid to our Musalla. This is a warning from the Prophet ﷺ, highlighting what the responsibility of offering qurbani that many people are negligent of. The Prophet ﷺ said, he who had to do his qurbani and never offered it should not come close, should not come to our musalla to pray Eid. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That is a great warning in itself. And reminding us of the responsibility of doing our qurbani. One of the companions of the beloved Prophet ﷺ, Sayyidina Zayd bin Arqam radiyallahu anhu, relates that one of the Sahaba said to the Prophet ﷺ, O Messenger of Allah, what is udhiyah? What is qurbani? And the Prophet ﷺ told him, he said, it is the sunnah, it is the practice of your father Ibrahim alayhi salam. Qurbani comes from the Prophet Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. Then the Sahabi asked, he said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, what benefit do we get from doing the udhiyah by offering a sacrifice? And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, a reward for every hair on that animal. A reward for every hair on that animal. And the Sahabi asked, he said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and what is the reward of wool? If there's no hair, then what is the reward of the wool? And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, every fiber of the wool, for every fiber of the wool you will get reward. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, as in the hadith of Ibn Majah. In another hadith, the beloved Prophet ﷺ was standing with his daughter, Sayyidah Fatima radiyallahu ta'ala anha, and her qurbani was being offered, and the Prophet ﷺ said, O Fatima, stay here and watch your qurbani. Be present and remain here in the place of the sacrifice. When a person slaughters an animal, he is forgiven at the fall of the first drop of blood. So staying at the place of the qurbani is a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and seeing your animal being sacrificed. And verily the animal shall be brought forward on the day of judgment with its blood. The blood will be gathered on the day of judgment, and the meat and the hooves and the wool, everything will be gathered on the day of judgment. And the Prophet ﷺ said it will be placed in your mizan, on your scale, and it will be increased in weight 70 times. The blood and the hooves and the wool and the meat and the bones, everything will be multiplied by 70, and then you will be rewarded. Sayyidina Abu Sa'id radiyallahu anhu al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu, he asked the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Ya Rasulullah ﷺ, is this reward only for the family of Muhammad? Like he was talking to Sayyidah Fatima. He said, is this only this reward where the thawab of the qurbani is multiplied by 70 of the weight of the animal? Is that only for the family of the Prophet ﷺ? And the Prophet ﷺ said, no. This thawab is for the family of Muhammad ﷺ and for all people. Thawab is for all the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ. Now getting to the serious stuff. Okay, we said slaughtering an animal with a specific intention in a specific number of days, a specific animal by a specific person. Now we are going to look at that specific person, and the rest of the lecture on qurbani is about that specific person. Okay, so upon whom is qurbani wajib? Who has to offer qurbani? Okay, who has to offer qurbani? And there are 4 basic conditions. This is the criteria. If you meet this criteria, qurbani is wajib on you. If you meet this criteria, qurbani is wajib on you. Conditions of obligation. When will it be an obligation for you to do qurbani? Is when you meet this criteria. Number 1, you must be a Muslim. So qurbani is not required from a non-Muslim, whether they are living in non-Muslim lands or Muslim lands. So Christians in Pakistan, for example, or Christian or Jewish people living in Palestine, for example, or Christians living in Damascus, for example, the Arab Christians. Okay, the qurbani is not wajib on them. It's only required from Muslims, whether Muslims are living in non-Muslim lands or Muslim lands. Wherever they live, Muslim offers qurbani. The second condition is that the person must be a muqim, must not be a musafir. So if somebody is in a journey, okay, and who is a musafir? A musafir is a traveler that has left the area that he lives in, he's left that area to go to a destination which is 57.5 miles away. Okay? Which is equal to 92 kilometers if you're traveling in America or other countries where they use kilometers instead of miles. Then 92 kilometers, like in Pakistan as well, you would use kilometers. And the majority of the Middle East, they use kilometers instead of miles. So it'd be 92 kilometers, you would be classed as a musafir. Let's say you've gone that far and you're going to stay there 6 days, 7 days, you're still a musafir. If you stay there 15 days or more, then you're not a musafir anymore. Okay? So, Qurban, you become a muqim. You become a resident person there, even though it's so far away. Okay?
Sorry to interrupt. Say if you have a residence in that area, but you stay in that residence for less than 15 days, say you rent a flat in that, which meets the criteria of the threshold, but say...
Yeah, so I've understood your question. Like students, for example, they have apartments near the university. Yeah? You go to London, you study, you've got an apartment there, for example. The thing is that apartment that you live in, you don't have family living there. You don't have a wife living there, you wasn't born there. Okay? You're only there for a temporary period of time, and that's for the purposes of your education. Okay? Now, like that place is a temporary place of residence. You will be a musafir even when you're going there. On the way, you'll be a musafir on the way there. And if you are there for 15 days or more, then you're not a musafir. But if you're there for a week, 2 weeks, then you are a musafir, even though it's your residence, even though it's your flat.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you're a student, for example, and you've got an apartment by university and it's 90 miles away from your home, that place is not your home. It's not a place of your residence. You're only there for a temporary period of time, okay? And you will have to shorten your prayers as well if you're there for less than 15 days. If you're going to go to your residence near the uni for 15 days or more, you're going to stay there that long, then you are not a musafir, you are a resident there. You are a resident there. And if you're there for less than 15 days, you are a musafir.
It's continuous days, isn't it?
It's continuous days.
Continuous days.
It's 15 continuous days. That's right. So anyone who is a resident anyone who is a resident must offer his qurbani. Anyone who is a musafir does not offer a qurbani. Now, a point I want to mention about Hajj. If you are a resident in Mecca, you leave the UK and you're going to stay in Mecca for 15 days or more. You're going to stay in Mecca for 15 days or more, then you become a resident there. Because you're there for 15 or more days, more than 15 days. Okay? Now, because you become a resident there, you would have to do 2 qurbanis. One qurbani of Hajj and the other qurbani of Eid. The days of Eid. Okay? The qurbani of shukr, the shakur, which is the Hajj tamattu that we do, which we can talk about inshallah when we ever do the fiqh of Hajj. And then that's only if you became a resident there. But the majority of people that go from the UK don't become residents in Mecca. They don't stay there for 15 plus days because they go to other places as well. Okay? So that means that people who go from the UK, when they go to Hajj, they only do 1 qurbani. Okay? That is the qurbani of Hajj. They don't have to do the qurbani of Eid because they are not muqim there. Okay? Moving on to the next point. Must be an adult. Must be an adult. So qurbani is not required from children. Now, adult has a very particular definition. The word adult, baligh. You've reached adolescence. Now, in this country, you seem to have reached adolescence at the age of 12. But in Islam, there is no age that defines whether you've become an adult or not. Yes, there is a measure. There is a measure. Okay, we will say that boys from the age of 12 can become baligh. But 15 is when they will become baligh. And girls from the age of 9 can become baligha. And at the age of 15 will become baligha. Okay? So for boys between 12 and 15, they may become adults, and for girls from the age of 9 to 15, they may become adults. And now this age that I'm speaking about is not your normal birthday. It's not your English, your calendar that you follow. It's actually not the solar calendar, it's the lunar calendar. So you have to work out your Islamic birth. Okay? So when you reach 15 and you hadn't seen any signs of adolescence, yeah? You haven't experienced anything that makes you an adult, and you reach 15, you automatically become an adult. Likewise for a woman, from the age of 9 onwards, she didn't see any signs, okay, that makes her an adult. But at the age of 15, she automatically will become an adult. Okay? And that is the age of 15 lunar years, not solar years. So you work out your Islamic birth, and you can do that on Islamic calendars, Islamic calculators online. You can put in your date, and it calculates for you what Islamic birthday you have. And then you count 15 years from then. Okay? Qurbani is required from adults, male or female. And number 4, they must have wealth. They must possess in order to offer the Qurbani. But there's conditions around what kind of wealth, how much of it. And that's what we're going to look at next. And that's the 4th point, and the rest of the discussion will be around that on the next slide. So the person must possess a threshold. There's a threshold, a mark. Okay? That if you reach that mark, you have to give Qurbani. That's what we call the nisab. That's what we call the nisab for Qurbani. Just the way zakat has a nisab, Qurbani also has a nisab. Now you must reach that threshold within the days of Qurbani. So if somebody reaches that threshold before the days of Qurbani, but during the days of Qurbani he's below that mark, Qurbani is not wajib on him. Does that make sense? Okay, he has to reach this mark, this threshold, within the days of Qurbani. So if on the first day of Eid he didn't have any money at all, but on the second day, it's still the 3 days, isn't it? On the second day he reached that threshold, Qurbani is still wajib on him. On the 3rd day, before Maghrib, somebody gave him some money, okay? And it reached that threshold. It reached the basic threshold where Qurbani becomes wajib. On the 3rd day, just before Maghrib was about to start, somebody gave him some money and he reached that threshold, Qurbani is wajib on him. Okay? So you must reach the threshold. What is that threshold? What is that nisab of wealth? How much does the Sharia say, the Islamic law say that you have to reach before it is imposed on you, before the Qurbani is imposed on you? Okay? How much is that? Okay. You must possess any of the below, and it must be free of your basic needs. So if you've got wealth, if you've got money, for example, but it's for your immediate needs, then Qurbani is not necessary. Okay, and we're going to look at more examples of that, inshallah. So if you possess any of the following, and it's free of your basic needs. First, $7.50 of gold. 7.5. $1. Recently, the value of gold has dropped in the gold market. Recently, gold, I think, was around £270, £260 last week. $1. $1 was around £260 because I had to calculate zakat for somebody. So I had to find out the value of gold. It's around £260. Times it by 7.5. Okay? So the nisab for the threshold in terms of gold is $7.50 of gold. So if a woman, for example, has $8 of gold, if a woman has, she's got bangles, she's got jewelry, and it is $8 of gold. Or even if it's 7, and she uses it, or she has bought it and she's going to give it to her daughter. A lot of our Asians do this. She's going to give it to her daughter later on when she gets married. But at the moment she's keeping it herself. This is hers at the moment, it's not her daughter's. If that's $7.50, and it reaches the threshold of the basic criterion, and it is more than her basic needs, which we will speak about, then she has to give Qurbani. She has to give Qurbani, even though she may be using it, even though she may be hiding it away somewhere for somebody else that she wants to give later on. That will be considered as wealth that she possesses, and if it's reaching the threshold, she has to offer Qurbani. Or if you have silver, then it needs to reach $52.5 of silver, and a tola of silver is very cheap. Okay, so $52.5 of silver. If you reach that, then you have to give Qurbani. So, but what about if you've got money? You've got no gold, no silver. You've got money. So what is the threshold for just cash? Okay, you've got no gold, you've got no silver. Okay, I have no gold, no silver. Then you just have money. What is the threshold then? What is that mark where Qurbani is wajib on you? The mark there, we will use silver. We will use silver as that mark. With the money that you have, the cash that you have, can you buy $52.5 of silver? If you can, you've reached the threshold. You understood? Also, and the majority of the cases, the next thing happens. Is everybody looking at the board, the presentation? You have merchandise. You have merchandise. You have things that you're going to sell. So you own a supermarket, for example, or you're running a mobile business and you sell mobiles. Or you're a car salesperson and you have cars that you bought with the intention to sell. Okay? Or you're in the property business and you bought a building in order to let or in order to sell. Okay? In all those scenarios, if what you hold, if what you possess, your mobiles that you're going to sell, or the stock in your market, for example, if that reaches $52.5 of silver in terms of monetary value, okay, and it's in excess of your basic needs as well, as I put that condition right at the top, it has to be in excess of the basic needs, then you are required to give Qurbani. So for anything else other than gold, we're going to use silver as the basic threshold. Okay? So if you've got only cash, you've got no gold or silver, you're going to look, can I with this cash buy $52.5 of silver? If you can, that has reached the mark. Okay? Likewise, you've got merchandise and goods. Also, belongings at home that are not your basic needs. If all of them put together reach $52.5 of silver in value, you have to give Qurbani, even though you might not have cash. For example, one mobile phone, we will class it as a haja today. It's one of your needs today. Okay? 2 for a businessman who has a business phone. 3, unless you have 2 wives, which is very unusual. 4 mobiles, you see you're getting excess there on you. It's not your basic need, right? Something that you rely on a daily basis. You don't. Understood? So that extra mobile, put it to the side. I might have to give Qurbani. Let's see what the value of that is. Anything excess of your basic needs. Anything excess of your basic needs. A TV. TV is not a basic need. A laptop for a student. Basic need. It doesn't look at that then. That's your basic need. There's the things that I don't need to put into that threshold. Okay? Put that to a side. I'm a student. I've got books that I rely on because I'm a doctor. I've got books in law. I'm a lawyer. I need books. Those are your basic needs. You put them all to a side. You don't put them into the threshold and work out. Okay? But any books that you're not using anymore, they're not your basic needs anymore. Put them all together and you check the value of those things that you're holding. Your TV, your extra mobile, your books that you're not using anymore. If they reach the value of $52.5 of silver, i.e. you can buy $52.5 of silver if you were to sell all these things, then Qurbani is wajib on you. And a lot of people don't know that. So basic needs, what's in your basic needs? Your residential home, the house that you live in. a car that you use, a telephone, I spoke about, tools for a builder are his basic needs. Okay, students' books, your laptop as a student as well, like mine, and unnecessary items. Unnecessary items. So you basically get a piece of paper and you put all these things down. What's a need and what's not a need, and what's not a need. What is the current value of that today? I mean, how much could I sell this for on eBay? Right? What's a reasonable price? What are people paying for this kind of stuff? If it's reaching $52.50 of silver during the days of Eid, from the Fajr of Eid till the 12th of Dhul Hijjah Maghrib, you have to give Qurbani. Whether you're the son or the daughter in the family, whether you've got parents, you're living with them, you're not, it doesn't matter. You're an adult, it's free of your base, it's free of your immediate needs, and it reaches the threshold, you have to give Qurbani. Items that are not necessary, TV, decorative items. Today we spend a lot of money just decorating. Decorative items that have value are not our basic needs. So you add them up as well and see whether they reach the threshold. It's going to be frames on the wall or cushions. Extra clothes that you're not wearing. By the way, this is only for Qurbani. This is the threshold. The threshold for zakat is very different. And inshallah, if Allah wills, we will do one or a few sessions on zakat requires. You can do some sessions in zakat as well. That's different. Qurbani's nisab is different. Even if you have extra clothes at home that you're not wearing anymore, okay? Even if they reach $7.50 of gold, let's say you've got so many clothes, which is unlikely, you don't have to give zakat on your clothes. But in terms of Qurbani, you may have to give Qurbani if the value reaches $52.50 of silver. So the nisab of gold, the nisab of Qurbani is different to the nisab of zakat. Extra clothes, so clothes that you're not wearing, put them all to a side, see if this reaches the threshold. If it reaches $52.50 of silver, right, then you have to give Qurbani. You have extra house, like that is not your basic need. An extra house, that you freehold house you have, for example, you put it on rent, or land, even though it may be on rent. All that is extra. It's not your basic need. Okay, and that's definitely going to reach $52.50 of silver. I think $52.50 of silver altogether is around £250, £240. $52.50 of silver altogether. But you work, obviously you need to be in touch with a goldsmith. So you have a friend that you phone asking him what the value is today, or you can go on to, is it the Bullion? Bullion, there's a website where you can check daily rates. Okay. Sports equipment, for example, you've got sports equipment, which wouldn't be classed as your basic need. Your basic need wouldn't be equipment that you hold for sports. It's including all gym equipment. That's a hobby. You don't need a treadmill to cut some fat and calories. You can walk, right? Get some fresh air as well. So it's not a basic necessity. So your treadmill you would add into the threshold of the nisab to see whether you have to you have to give Qurbani or not. Sorry. Basic needs, unnecessary items are not your basic needs. Okay, that's the last thing we talked about. Moving on to this one. This is quite an important one. We all in some way or form are in loans in this country. We owe somebody something. Especially if you're a student. And you got £27,000 to pay off just tuition fees. Allah make it easy for us. It's hard. Very tough times we're in at the moment. But you've got loans and debts and you've got liabilities, and the majority of the elderly people have a mortgage. Well, the elderly people have freehold homes. But some of the people around 35, 40 are still paying off long bank loans, for example. Liabilities are like your bills. Every month you've got to pay a mobile bill. The majority of people have contracts. You've got to pay bills. Or you've got a car, for example, okay, and you have it on finance. Let's say somebody done that and they have monthly installments to pay. Okay, so these are liabilities, loans, money that you have to pay off. So what do we do with that then? How does that fall into the picture of Qurbani? That's what we're looking at today in this particular slide. So if you have bills and loans that are immediate, for example, you've got an installment that's going to go this month. Okay? That's your mobile bill, that could be your electricity, gas bill, it could be your mortgage, for example, it could be a loan fees that's going to go. It's got to be immediate though. Okay? Not something that you're going to do next month. Something this month, immediate. Then what you do is you also deduct that. You also, everything that you have, for example, you had clothes, you had extra cars, you had extra mobiles, you had extra laptops, you must be a rich person, and you had extra things, and all of that put together, you could buy $52.50 of silver. But you've got a bill going out. You've got a mortgage to pay. You've got so and so and so and so things, liabilities. Then you will minus all of those and then see what's left over. Making sense? As I said, this is not easy, and I will send you the presentation, inshallah, if you leave your email addresses. And also, inshallah, I hope this will be on YouTube soon as well, inshallah, thanks to our brother Hussein, who, mashallah, records these valuable lessons and then leaves them for the ummah to benefit from. Sadqa jariyah on his behalf, Allah Ta'ala reward him. So inshallah you can refer back to this. So what you do is you take out you deduct all of your liabilities, anything that you have to immediately pay. Like I said, that's like monthly bills, long loans. If somebody says, I've got a mortgage for 25 years and therefore I don't have to give Qurbani because 25 years of mortgages, I mean, with the rates today, I don't know, the rates have gone down, by the way. I don't have a house on mortgage, but I'm aware the rates are down on mortgages at the moment. Banks are giving smaller rates relatively in the year. But let's say you have a fixed rate, okay, and your mortgage after 25 years was probably around 120 and it's turned up to be 180, okay, because of the interest. Unfortunately, the compound interest that you have to pay in this country, unfortunately, it has destroyed people's lives. Emotionally, people are mentally disturbed because of the financial problems in this country. Okay? So let's say you've got that. And somebody says, oh, £180,000 over 25 years, and the money I have, I can buy $52.50 of silver. But if I deduct that, I still need money to pay off my mortgage. So therefore I don't reach the threshold and therefore I don't have to give Qurbani. Is that a valid way of calculating your Qurbani this year? No. Why? Because you only take the immediate installment, which is probably £400, £350, £450 depending on the value of your property, £500, £550. For example, you just deduct that from the extra things that you have, the money that you have, the surplus money which is in excess of your basic needs, and then you take off the installment. Just that 1 month's installment, not the whole of the mortgage, not the whole of the loan that you have taken as a student. Okay, just that immediate installment that you have to give. Also, we have a liability, another religious liability, where we don't owe people, but we owe Allah. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like zakat you haven't paid. That's a liability. Zakat you haven't paid for the last 10 years, for the last 5 years. Or Qurbani that you had to give last year, you never gave it. That is a liability as well. That is the dayn of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the qarza that you owe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is haqqullah. That is the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is also a liability. So you will work out what was last year's Qurbani in terms of money, and you will also deduct that this year. That won't be counted in the threshold, basically. Okay, so any bill, any liability, including last year's zakat or last year's Qurbani, will all be minused, and then what's left? Does that reach $52.50 of silver? If that reaches $52.50 of silver in monetary value, then you have to give Qurbani. So you take out last year's and the years before, and for however long it may be. So we've looked at the conditions of obligation. We've also looked at the threshold, the nisab, and we've looked at loans and liabilities and how they affect Qurbani. Now, a practical manner. This is just a scenario that I came up with, a practical manner of how you would do this. So, what you have to remember is Qurbani will be wajib within 3 days. So it's those 3 days that you need to check your financial status in. Okay? And it's the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, the day of Eid, till the 12th of Dhul Hijjah for 3 days and 2 nights. Each adult member of the house must calculate what current sale value they have of any extra belongings or cash they possess. So if you've got the extra belongings, you put them all to a side on the list, and then you, in these 3 days, and you obviously preferably do it a lot earlier, getting ready for Qurbani. You would then contact your local goldsmith and you'd ask them the value of $52.50 of silver. You find out the rates. Usually what happens is people don't possess pure gold, just gold. They have other things as well. Like they have a TV, they have probably an extra mobile. They have a TV at least. Okay? They've got things that are beyond their basic needs. And they've got some gold as well. So how many types of things have they got? They've got a TV, they've got some gold, which is only about $1 or $2. And they've got some silver, which is about $8, for example. So if there's a variety of things, then what's the nisab for a variety of things? Is it gold, $7.50 of gold? Do we say now that's the new mark, or do we still keep silver as the mark? Silver is the mark. Silver is the mark. Silver is the nisab. So if you've got a few extra things, like you've got an extra mobile, an extra laptop, it's not your basic need, an extra TV, and you've got a bit of gold, which is less than $7.50. If it's $7.50 of gold, then it's out of question, isn't it? You've got to pay the nisab of gold. I mean, you're not paying nisab of gold. It's not zakat. You have to give Qurbani. You have to give Qurbani. But if you've got just $5 of gold, $3 of silver, you've got a house on rent, all that will be put together and you will check the value of silver. Silver will be the benchmark. Okay? That will be the threshold. So if all of your belongings, all the extra things, your gold, even your cash, all that put together reaches $52.50 of silver, you must offer Qurbani. Now, because Qurbani is wajib on you, you might not have cash to do it. Because you've got extra clothes and a TV, for example, and all those things reach $52.50 of silver. But you don't have cash to do Qurbani. What are you supposed to do now? 2 options. The Sharia says take a loan, qard, and do Qurbani. Or sell your items and do Qurbani. Because you've reached the threshold. Is that making sense? Take qard from somebody, even you haven't got cash, but you've got loads of extra clothes, you've got an extra mobile that you're not using, you've got books that are lying around that are not being used. Also, the toys of kids are the belongings of the parents. Remember that as a rule. Toys that you buy for kids do not belong to kids in Islamic law. They belong to the parents. Because if they belong to kids, then because it's the belonging of a kid, if the kid no longer uses it, it would not be allowed for you to give this toy to somebody else as a gift. It's the child's. This is why the toys of the kids belong to the parents. Okay? Now, because they belong to the parents, if there's toys that are not being used by kids anymore, will also be thrown into that list of things that are beyond your needs. These are things that we don't think about. Things that are hiding away in your loft, for example, that have some sort of value to them that can be sold, even in pennies, doesn't matter. Okay? Things that are in excess of your needs, that have worth and value, that can be sold, but you don't have cash. What do you do now? The Sharia says, if you haven't got cash, sell them. And then the money that you make, give Qurbani. Or, for example, that won't happen, practically. Okay, you won't get a custom in time, the days of Qurbani will end. So in that case, take a loan from somebody and give Qurbani. You still have to give Qurbani. even though you might not have cash. Okay. Moving on to sharing a large animal. Remember I said you have sheep, you have goat, you have camels, you have cows, you have buffaloes, you can give Qurbani, and all these things. In a sheep, you can't share. You can't have 5 people, 6 people sharing a sheep. Like a father in the house says, I'm going to buy 1 goat and I'm going to do Qurbani on behalf of everybody in my family. That is not a valid Qurbani. Qurbani can only be done by one person in a small animal, like a sheep and a goat. If it's a large animal, then you have 7 shares. How many? In a large animal, you have 7 shares. So in a cow or in a camel, you would put 1 share into. You'd have 1 share and that's your Qurbani. But in a sheep, 1 person for the whole sheep. Okay? So if the wife had to give a Qurbani as well, it was wajib for her, and the son who is 15, for example, had to give Qurbani as well because he's got enough wealth to give Qurbani. He reaches the threshold, for example. And the daughter as well. And the father says, I'll get 1 sheep and I'll do it on behalf of everybody. His is not valid and none of theirs is valid. He has to do his again and everybody has to do theirs separately. That Qurbani was not on behalf of anyone. How? What he can do, he can say, okay, I will do this Qurbani and I will give the thawab of this Qurbani to my mother, my father, my sons, my daughters. Even if they're living, you can give thawab to living people. That's valid. You're allowed to do that. Because you're not doing the Qurbani on their behalf. You're not absolving them of their responsibility of Qurbani. You're not taking the Qurbani away from them and saying, I'm doing it on your behalf. What you're doing is, I'm doing the Qurbani, it's my Qurbani, my animal, but I want the thawab to go to my mother who is in her old age. You're allowed to do that. The Qurbani will be on your behalf, and the thawab you can give to whoever you wish. Next point. The 7 shares that you have in large animals, like in a camel or in a cow, if you put 1 share in, your Qurbani has been offered. Okay? Now there's conditions with sharing a Qurbani, and just listen to them attentively. I have about half an hour, inshallah, to finish the dars. There's conditions in sharing a Qurbani. You will have 7 portions, and they have to be equal portions. They have to be equal portions. 7 equal portions by 7 people or less. So let's say 3 people got together and they said, we want to collectively do a Qurbani of a cow. 3 people got together and they said, we want to do a Qurbani of a cow. Now what they will do is they will divide the shares. It will still be 7 shares. And one of them says, look, I'll do 2 shares. The other will say, I will do 1. The other says, I'll do the remaining. That's fine. You can have less people doing more shares. You can have 1 person having 2 shares in a camel. That's fine. 1 for himself, 1 for his wife. That's fine. 1 for himself, 1 for somebody who passed away. 1 for himself, 1 for the Prophet ﷺ. 1 for himself, 1 for the Sahaba ridwanullah, or the Ahlul Bayt, the family of the Prophet that passed away. Fine. But what you can't have is 8 people sharing a Qurbani. Because their shares now will not be equally 7. You cannot have 8 people sharing a Qurbani because their shares will not be equal. The animal will not be divided into 7 parts. It will be divided into 8 parts. So nobody's Qurbani has been offered. If that animal was sacrificed, nobody's Qurbani has been offered. The responsibility is still on their shoulders. Or if somebody has 7 unequal shares, as I mentioned, the 4th point, if somebody has unequal shares, for example, there's 7 people, and 6 of them agree that we'll pay more, and this friend of ours pay less. Now the portions are not equal. The Qurbani is not valid for anyone. Neither theirs, neither his. Okay? The portions have to be equal. People ask the question, I have Ateeq to do. Ateeq is the sacrifice of an animal that you do in happiness of having a child. Okay? People say, I have an Ateeq to do. Can I share an animal with you? You're doing Qurbani. Can I put my share of Ateeq? Ateeq is nafil and Qurbani is wajib. So the ulama say yes. You are allowed to put in a nafil share in a Qurbani animal. You're allowed to. Somebody wants to give their Ateeq, the parents want to give Ateeq of their children, then they are allowed to do that. They're allowed to share an animal that is for the purposes of Qurbani. Why? Because whether it's nafil or whether it is wajib, it is all ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Ateeq is considered ibadah, and so is the Qurbani considered an ibadah as well. Likewise, you can have a share for, so I, for example, would share with somebody else, and I would take 4 shares and somebody else will take 3 shares. 7, right? Agree? I take 4, you will take, one of you will take 3, and we can share an animal. That's fine. It's all distributed, and it's 7 shares. Okay? 7 people don't have to buy 7 shares. I said it could be less people buying the shares or paying for the animal. And let's say I've taken 4, and one of you guys, whoever wants to share with me, let's say Majid Bhai is sharing with me, he takes 3 and I take 4. Now, these 4, I can intend different intentions. Like one for the Prophet ﷺ, give thawab. That's not a wajib one, is it? My wajib is only one. It's for me. The other 3 are nothing. Okay? Just remember that. One other very, very, very important thing about Qurbani, if you're sharing in an animal, is that when the meat is cut up, it must be weighed. And the 7 people must take equal weights. Is that making sense? If they all agree, they say, look, no, we'll just negotiate. It doesn't matter. You've taken a bit more, doesn't matter. That is not allowed. You might think, oh, it's my right. I can say to that person, no, Qurbani is the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a point where you can't say, oh, don't worry, you can take an extra few pieces of meat. No. If you share a Qurbani, it is the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to distribute the meat in 7 shares among the people. And it has to be weighed. It's wajib for you to weigh the meat and give it equally. This wouldn't concern a lot of us here because we don't do that in this country. But where our Qurbani is happening, it matters there. And there's a way around that. What you could do is, all 7 people, whilst the meat is being cut up, if you want to avoid the weighing, there's a way around it. Okay? And it's a legal way, an Islamic way. What you could do is, all of the 7 people could say, all of our shares we give to this one person. Now he can give us whatever weight he wants. And then he makes the 7 pairs without weighing, and everybody's happy with that. Okay, that's one way of doing it. But inshallah, if we ever do it here in this country, then we'll come to that. The distribution of the meat is the next point. It is mustahab, it is preferred to distribute afzal. There's thawab in, more thawab in dividing the meat into 3 portions. It's not fard, it's not wajib. Okay? So you don't have a sin if you don't do this. You can keep the entire meat for yourself and your family. There is nothing wrong with that. There is no sin. Okay? But it's not the best practice. It's not the better way of offering your Qurbani. Your Qurbani, the best way of doing it is after you've had the animal sacrificed and prepared the portions, then you keep a portion for yourself and your family, give 1 portion to your friends and neighbors, and 1 portion to needy people. Okay? That is the mustahab way. And if somebody kept all the meat himself, there is no sin on his part. There is no sin on his part. It's against etiquette, it's against adab. Okay? And you would avoid doing that. If you were doing Qurbani because of somebody who passed away, made a wasiyah. He bequested in his will, or she bequested in her will, that from my wealth, when I pass away, from my wealth, give a Qurbani on my behalf. They said that in their will before they passed away. Now that portion that you're going to do on their behalf, you cannot take anything from it. It must be given to all the needy people. Okay, it must be given to needy people. Right, so that was a snapshot of Qurbani, and I hope you've understood things more than you have become confused. Inshallah, I hope I've helped explain some basic concepts. Eid prayer is our last part of the lecture today, inshallah. Eid al-Adha, there are two aspects to it: before prayer, the morning that you wake up, and the prayer itself. Okay, now before the prayer, it is mustahab, it is preferred during Eid al-Fitr to have something light or sweet to eat. Okay, like an odd number of dates, 3 dates, 5 dates, 7 dates. It's sunnah of the Prophet. But in Eid al-Adha, it's sunnah not to eat anything before Eid. Okay, it's preferred not to, just remain hungry, and then go to Eid al-Adha, and return back home and then eat. Applying fragrance, wearing clean, don't have to be new clothes or brand new trainers. Surely you're not going to wear them inside the masjid. But wearing new or clean clothes and taking a shower is also mustahab, and on the day of Eid. Thirdly, if somebody is offering Qurbani, then it is mustahab for them from the 1st of Dhul Hijjah till the point that their Qurbani is offered, till the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. It is mustahab for them not to cut their nails or their hair. It's not fard, but it's not wajib. Okay, it's mustahab. It is afzal. It is better, preferred for them not to cut their nails, not to cut their hair. But if somebody did, they're going to do a Qurbani, and they did cut their hair or their nails, there's no sin on their part. And also on the way to the masjid, reciting the takbeers. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, walillahi alhamd. Reciting this aloud. In Eid al-Fitr, you don't recite it aloud. Eid al-Adha, as you're going to the masjid, reciting it aloud. Coming with your sons, make that atmosphere where your child feels that it's a special moment. Okay, it's something different that we're doing today. We're only doing it once in the year. Do that. And this is why it's better to walk to the masjid making takbir. Imagine 10, 15 people, mashallah, walking together and saying to Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Feel like you're going to Hajj. So that's what Eid is, reviving the spirit and showing that spirit to our children so that they grow up with that. Okay, so even if you're in the car, for example, reciting, don't talk about anything. Recite takbir on Eid al-Adha morning. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Everybody recite Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, walillahi alhamd. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, walillahi alhamd. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, walillahi alhamd. The history behind this is beautiful. When Sayyiduna Ibrahim alayhi salam was about to sacrifice his son, Sayyiduna Ismail alayhi salam, remember the dream he had, the whole significance of why we do Qurbani. Okay, that's the historical perspective of Qurbani, which I haven't still given. Okay, because I was looking at the fiqh of Qurbani. I could talk more on the historical perspective. I can talk about the actual slaughter itself, the different types of slaughter, for example. That's a different subject altogether. Okay, but what happened was Sayyidina Ismail alayhi salam was under the knife, and his father Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam was about to sacrifice in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he saw a dream that he was doing this. And he was the most beloved child that he had, and that was the only one he had then, at old age as well. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was testing him. So Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam was about to sacrifice him, and Jibreel alayhi salam came with a ram from heaven. That Allah had accepted this sacrifice to leave the child alone and to sacrifice the animal instead. So Sayyidina Jibreel came down with an animal saying Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And Sayyidina Ibrahim looked up and saw Jibreel saying Allah. And then Sayyidina Ibrahim realized that Allah had accepted my sacrifice, and that Allah had accepted Ismail, and that I should leave him now. And Allah is sending a ram from heaven for me to sacrifice. So in response he said, La ilaha illallah Allah. La ilaha illallah. And then Sayyidina Ismail looked up. And he realized that Allah had accepted the sacrifice, and he said, Allahu Akbar wa lillahi alhamd. So the takbir actually is 3 parts. The part that Jibreel alayhi salam said, and the part that Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam uttered, and then the last part which Sayyidina wa lillahi alhamd. Thanks is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which Sayyidina Ismail alayhi salam recited. Now remember that we have Ayyam al-Tashriq, from the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, these are the days when you have to recite this takbir straight after jama'ah in the masjid, straight after jama'ah if you are praying in the masjid, the first jama'ah, not the second one if you ever done a second one. It's only wajib in the first jama'ah. After the first jama'ah of the masjid, it is wajib to do this takbir from the 9th of Dhul Hijjah all the way to the Asr Salah of the 13th of Dhul Hijjah. These days, the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 4 days are known as the days of the takbir, takbir al-tashriq, in which after every salah you recite it up. So if you're reading at home, you're not in the jama'ah. So it's not wajib, but it's mustahab, it's better at home. The women at home, better for them to recite this takbir in these days, from the fajr of the 9th till the asr of the 13th. Okay? It is better, it's not wajib. If you come to the masjid late and you pray your own salah, it's not wajib for you to recite this after salah, it is better for you to recite it after salah. Now moving to the prayer, the Eid al-Adha prayer is wajib. It's a wajib prayer. Okay? Jum'ah is a fard prayer. Eid is a wajib prayer. So if you deliberately miss it, you are sinful. Practically you are sinful for missing Eid prayer. And it is wajib upon the same people, Jum'ah, the same conditions required for Jum'ah are required for the Eid prayer, in terms of who is required to do the Eid prayer. For example, you must be a resident. If you're a musafir, then Eid prayer is not wajib on you. Okay? If you are a resident, Eid prayer is wajib upon you. The sermon is not a shart, the khutbah is not a shart. In Jum'ah, it's a condition for the validity of the Jum'ah. But in Eid, during Eid, it is sunnah. It is not a shart, it is not a condition during Eid. Also, the Jum'ah khutbah is before the Salah, and the Eid khutbah is after the Salah. That is also Sunnah. So if somebody changed the order, only missed the Sunnah. The Eid is valid. If somebody done it before, for example. Okay? There are 6 extra takbirs. Shay, Zaid, Takbir. Takbirat. 6 extra takbirs. You make 3 extra Allahu Akbars in the first rak'ah and 3 extra in the second rak'ah. So Imam says Allahu Akbar, and then you close your hands, and then you recite Sana, Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, to the end, and then the Imam will say 3 extra Allahu Akbars. Allahu Akbar, put your hands down to your sides. Then Allahu Akbar, hands to the sides. Now the next time he says the extra one, Allahu Akbar, then you close your hands. Okay? And then Imam will recite Surah Fatiha. And then the next 3 extra takbirs that you will do, next three extra takbirs that you will do will be in the second rak'ah. The Imam will recite Surah Fatiha and Surah Ikhlas, or whichever surah he recites, he makes qira'ah, and then just before you go into the ruku, the Imam will make 3 extra takbirs, and then at the 4th one he will go into ruku. And you lift your hands, Allahu Akbar, put them to the side, Allahu Akbar, side, Allahu Akbar, to the side, and then the 4th one you go into the ruku with the Imam. So the 3 in the beginning are extra, the first rak'ah and in the beginning, and then 3 just at the end of the second rak'ah, also wajib. If the Imam makes, by mistake, an extra takbir, he says Allahu Akbar another time, for example, follow him. You're required to follow the Imam in that mistake. Okay? What about people who come late? Even for Eid once in a year. So what do? I mean, takbeers are wajib, right? Takbeers are wajib. Lifting the hand is a sunnah. Lifting the hand for takbeer is. So if somebody didn't lift their hand but said Allahu Akbar, then it's wajib. Lifting the hand in takbeer is a sunnah. Saying Allahu Akbar is a wajib. Okay? So if somebody joined, scenario number 1, if he joined the first rakat The Imam had already made the takbeers. He was doing his wudu and he come and the Imam had already done his takbeers. What does this person do? This person enters his salah and he says his own takbeers by lifting his hands, even though the Imam is reciting. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Understood? So he comes in and he makes his immediately, without thana, without reciting, Subhanakallahumma. He comes in, he says his first Allahu Akbar, closes his hands. That's the takbir tahrima. Then he makes his 3 extra. Allah, even though the Imam is still reciting. Okay, he's making up his 3 takbirs. That's scenario number 1. Scenario number 2 is the Imam is in ruku and Muqtadi Sahib is just arriving. So what does this person do now? He goes into the ruku with the Imam and he says his Allahu Akbar in the ruku. It's wajib to do his takbir in the ruku. He doesn't lift his hands. Lifting the hands is only sunnah. So he does his wajib, leaves the sunnah. In the ruku he says Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Unless he has time, that Imam's just gone into ruku and I'll have time to make my takbir standing before I go into my ruku and I'll reach the Imam in ruku, then he is required to do them standing up. Scenario number 3, if somebody missed the first rak'ah completely, arrived in the second one, how many takbirs does he have to make up? The 3 of the first one, right? He didn't reach the first rak'ah. So this person, when he makes his masbuq, we call him, people who come into a second or third rak'ah, we call them masbuq. Muqtadi, masbuq. Somebody who came late for salah and missed a rak'ah or 2 rak'ahs or 3 rak'ahs. Such a person, when he makes up his extra rak'ah, when he stands up again, then he will say he will make his takbirs then. He still has to recite his takbir of Eid. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of us in our knowledge, inshallah, make our knowledge beneficial for us. Allah accept us through our knowledge and our practice, inshallah, which is the ultimate goal of everything that we do, our ibadah and everything that we do. The ultimate purpose is acceptance in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. With that I finish. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.